Most people think building wealth for yourself equals freedom. The truth is, it's the fastest way to build a cage you can't see. What if your net worth is actually your biggest liability? There's a specific type of wealth that rots from the inside out. Ever notice how certain people become more vulnerable the richer they get? That's not irony. That's design. If this topic calls to you, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Building an empire on personal consumption turns every win into a hostage situation. The bigger house needs better security. The exotic car demands a fortified garage. The rare watch draws eyes you didn't ask for. Before you know it, ownership flips. You don't own things anymore. Things own you. Ancient civilizations already understood this pattern. Empires built on vanity collapse fast. The logic is ruthless. The more you display, the more you broadcast weak points. Every status symbol becomes a target marker, showing exactly where to strike. Think about someone you know who's obsessed with image. How much energy do they burn protecting their reputation? How much effort goes into proving they matter? Now compare that to someone who just delivers without the noise, who actually has more power. The trap is invisible at first. You start accumulating for security. You end up accumulating to prove something. And the moment you need to prove anything, you've already lost. Real power never begs for validation. Modern markets have become ego theaters. Everyone performing to be seen, admired, envied. But nobody realizes that the more you depend on external validation, the cheaper you become. Anyone can mess with you. Just question your symbol. Think billionaires with no real allies sleep well? They own the world, but live surrounded by people who only want what they have, not who they are, just what can be extracted. That's the golden curse. You thought you were buying power. You bought dependency instead. How capital becomes a weapon when everyone else treats it like a trophy. There's a brutal difference between having money and knowing what to do with it. Most people treat capital as the finish line. Professionals treat it as the starting point. Drop a comment if this ever clicked for you at some point. Something strange happens when you disconnect your identity from your bank account. You start making moves that emotionally trapped people never would. You spot opportunities where others see risk, not because you're reckless, because you're not protecting ego. You're building systems. The Stoics had a vicious exercise. Visualize losing everything: house, money, status. Not to prepare for failure, to become immune to the fear of it. Because once you've accepted worst-case scenarios, nobody has emotional leverage over you anymore. Think about it. Why do rich people panic so hard during downturns? Because wealth became their identity. Losing money means losing who they are. Now think about someone who uses money purely as fuel for impact. Crisis? Just adjust the strategy. Ever notice the most influential leaders are rarely the most flashy? They invest in infrastructure, not image. They spend on teams, not tokens. They pay for efficiency, not appearances. This isn't humility. It's cold calculation. There's an old practice called voluntary discomfort. You deliberately expose yourself to harsh conditions so you don't get addicted to luxury. Not masochism. Training. You teach your brain that comfort isn't necessity, it's bonus. When you do this, power inverts. Markets stop controlling you. You don't have to accept any terms just to maintain lifestyle. You can refuse. You can wait. You can move only when advantage is yours. While others negotiate scared of losing comfort, you negotiate with mathematical precision. It's invisible, but it changes everything. Real freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less and using the excess as strategic ammunition, not decoration. Why solving real problems builds walls that money alone never could. Here's something nobody tells you about reputation. It works like an invisible shield, but only if built correctly. If this content is helping you, drop a like. It helps the channel continue. When you build wealth, solving problems for millions, you're not just making money. You're creating an involuntary army of defenders. People who depend on what you build will protect what you do, not out of blind loyalty, out of self-interest. Compare that to someone who got rich selling illusions or exploiting loopholes. The day things turn, nobody defends them. Everyone jumps ship. Because there's no real value worth protecting. Ever seen how some people survive public scandals untouched, while others get destroyed over smaller controversies? The difference isn't luck, it's value. Infrastructure built before the storm hit. Ancient military strategy had a concept: favorable terrain. You choose where to fight. When you create massive value for entire communities, you're fighting on ground where any attack against you hurts third parties. And third parties don't let that slide. This is different from buying influence. Bought influence evaporates when money runs out. Influence built through real impact multiplies on its own. Think about someone who transformed an industry, created jobs, solved a massive social problem. Now, imagine someone trying to publicly destroy that person. How many people come to their defense? How many careers depend on that structure staying intact? Meanwhile, the billionaire who only accumulates for show has no real allies, just opportunists. The day they fall, nobody lifts a finger, because nobody loses anything real when they go down. The math is brutal. Creating selfish wealth means betting you will always be stronger than all enemies combined. Creating collective wealth means attacking you is attacking a crowd. Which bet seems smarter? Let's talk about a pattern that repeats in every industry, yet most people completely miss it. It's about how having a real purpose becomes a lethal advantage in a world where almost everyone operates on pure greed. You see, the most talented people on the planet don't just chase a high salary. They want to know their work actually matters. And for those who understand this, it creates a brutal opportunity. When you build a business with a clear purpose that goes beyond just making money, you attract a level of talent that normal companies can only dream of. You get people who are willing to work harder, think deeper, and stay loyal even when things get incredibly difficult. Not because you're paying them more, but because the project itself means something profound to them. Think about it. The major breakthroughs in history rarely come from people who are just in it for a paycheck. They come from individuals who are obsessed with solving a problem that bothers them to their core. That obsession generates a quality of work that money can never, ever buy. But it gets even better. When you remove raw self-interest from your decision-making, you start to see the market in a completely different way. You stop looking for where you can profit the most and start searching for where you can generate the most impact. And what you will find is that those places are often the ones everyone else ignores because the financial returns aren't immediate. But that's the secret. Precisely because these areas are ignored, the competition is incredibly low. The space to innovate is massive. And when you finally get it right, the market treats you as singular, as one of a kind. Why? Because you were the only one crazy enough to go where nobody else was looking. Then there's the critical factor of timing. Companies driven solely by profit are constantly jumping from one trend to the next, always chasing the latest hype. They never build anything that lasts. But businesses that are anchored in a real, unshakable mission have the patience to let markets mature. This isn't just idealism, it's a form of strategic patience that is almost a superpower. When your goal is to build something that truly matters, you can see moves that might take 10 years to pay off. You can afford to refuse easy money today if it compromises your long-term vision. That kind of discipline is exceptionally rare. And in business, anything rare has absurd value. Here's another detail that almost nobody talks about: connections. When you're genuinely trying to solve a real-world problem, you naturally meet other people who care deeply about that same thing. This isn't forced, awkward networking. These are natural alliances, friendships built on shared values. And those connections open doors that money can never unlock. Because trust can't be bought. It has to be built, one authentic interaction at a time. Now, let me ask you a question that might shift your perspective entirely. What if real power isn't about how much you can keep for yourself, but how much you can give away without becoming weaker? For centuries, traditional elites operated on the exact same logic: concentrate as much as possible, maintain absolute control over everything, and above all, never, ever show weakness. For a long time, that strategy actually worked. But the world has fundamentally shifted. Transparency is now the standard. Information that was once secret is now a commodity, available to anyone. And in this new world, Those who try to hide too much don't command respect. They raise suspicion. The new standard of influence isn't about accumulating resources in silence. It's about distributing them with intelligence. I'm not talking about performative charity for a photo op. I'm talking about strategic investment in the ecosystems around you, ecosystems that strengthen you as they grow. Think of it this way: when you create secondary wealth for the people in your network, you're not losing power. You're multiplying the number of allies who have a genuine, vested interest in your success, because your success is now directly tied to their success. This is completely different from creating dependency. Dependency breeds resentment over time, but interdependence, that breeds unshakable loyalty. There's an old story about great generals who always shared the spoils of war with their soldiers. They didn't do it out of kindness. They did it out of cold, hard math. They knew that well-rewarded soldiers fight harder, they defend the line better, and they don't desert at the first sign of difficulty. That same logic applies perfectly today. When you transform your capital from something you hoard into a tool for collective elevation, you're not just being nice. You're building a human fortress around yourself. And here's the final, beautiful trick in this whole equation. The more you distribute intelligently, the more value comes back to you. This isn't some mystical concept like karma. It's the simple, predictable power of network effects. The people you helped grow become new connections. Those connections turn into new opportunities. And those opportunities fuel your own growth in ways you could never have achieved alone. While the selfish accumulator sits isolated in their castle, counting their coins, the generous strategist is surrounded by a network of people who genuinely want to see them win. Because when they win, everyone wins. So, if this video opened your mind to a new way of thinking, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And I want to know, comment below which part of this hit you the hardest. Remember, absolute power in the coming years won't belong to whoever hoards the most. It will belong to whoever knows how to distribute without weakening. It will belong to those who transform resources into impact, who build a legacy instead of just building piles of cash. Because in the end, nobody remembers how much you had. They only remember what you did with it. Thanks for watching.